So I'm just going to tell you about the Utah Advocacy Coalition. We believe that change begins with connection. Our mission is to create stronger systems of support by bringing together advocates, organizations, and community members who care deeply and work collaboratively for a better Utah. Capacity Conversations is one of the ways we live that mission. These gatherings are designed to open space for real dialogue about leadership, lived experience, and the many ways people grow into their purpose. We believe stories build bridges, and today's conversation is a beautiful example of that. It's now my pleasure to introduce the two voices leading this next part of the program. Representative Verona Mauga. Yay! A dedicated public servant and community advocate, and Alyssa DeHart, who will be guiding the conversation. So thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Well, thank you guys for all being here, and thank you, Verona, for joining us today. When I spoke with you about a couple months ago at the Capitol, I was just really impressed when the way that you had grown really through your experience over the last year. And you are the first Samoan woman and to hold a legislative office, making history there in the continental United States, right? Yeah. Yeah. That right? Yeah. So she's making history in all kinds of ways. Also, really, you were able to use your influence to do some great things to protect families in Utah, and I'll talk more about that in a little while. With this capacity conversation and talking about how you have become who you are now, when you look back in your life and you think about, and I guess we could all do that for just a moment, think about yourself as like a 5-year-old person. Think about what you were doing then, how you were, the struggles that you had, the things that were insurmountable, and then flash forward to where you are now and the types of things that you're handling. What stands out to you in that journey? Does this on? Okay. Yeah, this is something that I'm still learning, is that our capacity expands not just during the work and during the hustle. It expands mentally, spiritually, and physically when we can really focus on staying grounded during the really difficult times and staying curious or engaged when you're overworked and exhausted. But then also just to be very present and to continue learning when spiritually you feel like you need more. And so for me, thinking about when I was 5 years old to right now be just completing my first term in the legislature, I realized as I was going through the motions and being in this space where there's so much energy and so many differences in opinions and feelings, that I had to go through that so that my capacity to do things that just serve had expanded in the way that it needed to expand so I could do the very specific work that I was doing at the legislature. That's incredible. Yeah, to just think about, that's something that most of us, many of us in this room, myself included, I can't quite imagine one that feels like, and to be in that role and in that position. You've worn many hats through the years. You're a business owner and you're a mom. I'm sure as a mom, you've needed to advocate. That's part of being a mom, right? Yes. And you've needed to pivot and go with the flow and change some things. We were talking a little bit about that earlier, about just how, we start in one place and then are able to, we have certain ideas, right? That's the thing. We have certain ideas about way things should go. And then somewhere along the way, we're able to loosen our grasp on some of those things and change. Can you speak to how your life experience has driven you to take on more of that let it go attitude? Yeah, I think we have some others in the room here today, and just being a mother, right? Like we often have to pivot and be super creative about the way we do things and how we're going to communicate and even how we give and receive communication. And so that experience alone of being a mother has been so helpful to me. It gives you a perspective, uh, and then understanding that we're not necessarily in control. We may have ideas and goals and wants and needs in our life, but the direction that we go isn't what we fully imagined, I guess. And so for me, I've always known that, like, this is what I want, this is my end goal. Uh, but I don't know if that's where I'm going to end up. But I know that if I work really hard and if my intentions are in the right place, I'll end up exactly where it's supposed to be.
So it sounds like you really have learned to follow your inner voice, your heart. Um, Tell us more about how you develop that skill set.
Well, but I think it's something we developed over time, just living life and getting things wrong and sometimes getting things right and uh, being in spaces that make you feel uncomfortable. You start to I remember getting to a point in life where I started to realize, like, what felt yucky inside and what felt good. And so I kind of, for a while, was just chasing what felt good. And sometimes, uh, and for me, that was spiritually. If and that was being connected to spirituality for me. And I'm Polynesian, and we're very connected to our ancestors. Uh, I know that without the people who came for before me, who sacrificed before me, uh, I know that I received their blessings, like that it's still here for me and it's still lingering. The lessons, the hard work that they went through, I still have those lessons that I carry with me in my heart. If you walk into my office at the Capitol, so my colleagues are like, Rep Mello, why haven't you decorated your office? I don't have much in there, but I do have photos of my ancestors, of my grandparents on both sides, of my great great grandparents, and of Jesus Christ. And the reason why that's the only thing I have in my office is because when I walk into that space, I need it to be a place where I can instantly connect to who I am and to where I came from. And so for me, being uh, just following my purpose and being in alignment with that is remembering where I came from and remembering the values and lessons I grew up with.
That's fantastic. An image can go a really long way to helping us fulfill our purpose. And sometimes I found the image in our head is the very thing that is tripping us up, right? Have you had times in your life that you just, I think you kind of spoke to that a little bit, where you just sort of had to let go of the image in your head and let it evolve? Can you tell us about a time like that for you?
Yeah, I think this just goes back to what our wants are in life, right? Like what our desires are. And so I think I really had to trust uh, that I had a purpose. And so I remember one time working really hard for a promotion and hoping that I was going to get it, and like truly believing that I was the best fit for this promotion, and then not getting it. Uh, and just feeling really confused and just starting to like have a little bit of victim mentality. Like, why do bad things happen to me? Why couldn't I get this? Like, the poor team is going to have to work under this other woman when it should have been me because I would have been so much better. You know, like you start having these thoughts. But what I learned is, again, there's always another door that's going to open up. Like, we may not be able to see it, uh, but if we are truly doing work with, again, good intentions, I know that things happen exactly the way they're supposed to be.
I love that, because it is the case that with maturity, you seem to start to understand, like you've had enough experiences that you've lived, that you start to see, okay, it didn't work out and it's going to be okay. I'm okay with it being different than I wanted to. Um, I've found that a little bit in my life too. There's been a few redirections I've come to understand it to be. Um, if you had gotten that role, do you think you would be where you are today?
I don't know. And maybe not, you know? Maybe that wasn't the experience that I needed to be where I'm at right now. Not that I would have been mad at it, or maybe I would have been really great at it, but it may not have been what I needed to grow in the way I needed to grow. So we could be right here having this conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. I That's what it seems like happens for me in my life, and I'm sure you guys experience that as well. Tell us about the journey to where you are now.
It wasn't something that I ever expected. Um, and I'll share this because I was just thinking about it this morning. Um, I have one kid. He's about to graduate from SEU on Friday. Really proud of him. But I wanted more. I wanted five, and my husband wanted more. But for whatever reason, we only had, we just have Blue Mountain, and he is perfect and wonderful. Uh, with that desire of a mom to like have more kids to take care of and nurture, and uh, just didn't happen for us. And as I was running for office, I thought about that, and it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, that didn't happen because I needed to serve my community. I needed to be available to other families and other children. And so it's those moments where it you really struggle with something and it affects you so deeply, but then you get to a place in life and you went, okay, that's why that happened. And I get those moments a lot, and I'm sure that you guys do too. But there's so many times where I can connect back to, oh, that's why I struggled so much mentally. That's why I was depressed that one year, because I needed to go through those motions so I could know how to serve other people going through those things.
I, yes, definitely would have. Finding the purpose, I think, is what makes the pays of life really worth it. When there's a purpose and we mind that it can serve others, for me, that's beautiful. That's exactly what I find helps, I guess, in the middle of it. Because sometimes life just seems like it gives you more than you have. Like you just feel like, no, not me, not now. I can't. Um, have you it hit any times like that?
Or I feel like I can't.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know like we're saying all these nice words, and we're at the point where we're talking about the good things, the outcome, right? But it in order to get there, you have to be stretched in a way that you're put to the test mentally, spiritually, and physically. There's been many moments, and uh not just for periods of time, even throughout the day. I think when you and I talked that one day at the Capitol, first of all, I was so grateful to see you, because being nuclear is difficult, and it's great, it's exciting, but there are moments where um, you feel like this is real hard. What did I just get myself into? What am I doing here? And so, like, yes, there are periods of time where things seem really difficult, like you can't get through it, but there's also moments throughout the day. Like I could be here with you all just feeling really great, and then get in my car and like, you're triggered by something, and it's like, how do I get out my head? How do I do this? Because in this moment, I feel stuck. I feel like I can't do anything else. I bet what there's no movement. Uh, and so yes, I've experienced that many times in my life.
Well, I was thrilled to see you that day too, because I remember meeting you before or just while you were in the process of running for office. And that I really admired that tenacity and really, I mean, something that's so vulnerable to put yourself out there, really all of it out there, for the public eye to see. And then for the purpose of serving District 31, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, as you serve that district and the constituents there, what types of themes stay top of mind for you? And how does your life experience play into that?
I knock on a lot of doors while I was running for office, and I talked to a lot of families and a lot of business owners. And the big thing for me was that there were times where I was knocking on doors in apartment complexes, and there would be videos with eviction notices or late rent notices. And then the next day I would move to another neighborhood where their financial situations were just completely different from the houses I knocked before. And so I think about how different people's lives are, even within two cities. I represent Taylorsville and West Valley. Uh, their financial situation is, I had people who are living below poverty, and I had people who are very wealthy, living multi-million dollar homes. And this is all within one city. And so I think about the needs of all those people and what actually connects them. Uh, and so one thing I noticed talking to people, everyone's concerned about the economy, but everyone's also concerned about their families and making sure that their needs are met. People are concerned about their neighbors. And so uh, for me, what comes to top of mind is trying to represent people in a meaningful way. I think there are a lot of people struggling right now. And so if you look at where the biggest needs are, I'm looking at those families who are living below poverty level, who don't have access to quality education, not because it's not there, uh, but they don't have transportation and their parents are struggling and they're going for things like their family dynamics are just so different. People can't get food on the table. There's so many different struggles within a district. And so I look to those families and um, as I'm looking at the big picture for a district.
Oh, there are disconnects for each person, right? And trying to connect the resources to the people can be a struggle. It can't be something that and for all of the good that's going on around in our communities, because there's a lot of good. Yeah, that struggle exists. And so as you're working on policy and things like that, have you found ways to get in touch with those people's needs in meaningful ways? And then how does that translate to the actions or policies that you write? You wrote some really significant lies this year. Again, making history. I'll let you tell us about how. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So as far as connecting with community and connecting with my constituents, for many of them, we have to meet people where they're at. And so that means going to their churches, going to the elementary schools where their kids are, going to the junior high schools and high schools. And so I spend a lot of time in community doing those things and then also serving in different ways. But we also have a lot of really engaged constituents who are coming up to the Capitol, who are emailing, you are calling, who are going dissecting the bills and like calling me and giving me really good information for me to go in and figure things out. Cheerlets. So there's a lot of different ways to connect and to go to the people. And so for the ones who aren't ever going to make it up to the Capitol, who aren't calling or emailing me, then we have to go to that. And that's to be in the community.
That's impressive. So you have a pretty busy schedule. You stay engaged in your community, and then also, you spoke to people emailing or approaching you. For some people, that sounds very intimidating. They're not sure that their representative would really listen, or they just don't know how to go about it. What would you say to those people as far as advocating for the things that really matter to them and the changes they'd like to see made?
Reaching out to your legislature and going to the Capitol isn't the only place to be able to do that. For those who just don't feel comfortable, like if you can, I say yes, reach out to me directly. I would absolutely love that. But find somewhere in your community to serve because we all make a difference doing different things within the community.
That's a really important point. There are, as we spoke about, call it that's going on. There are a lot of organizations and people to connect with and ways to help and serve. Yes. So we can be involved at any level that's our comfort zone. And really in any way, right? Because we all had different strengths to lean into and ways to help each other. Um, yeah. So tell us about that piece of legislation.
Yeah, so I ran 5 bills. Uh, uh, Before session started, as a freshman, as a Democrat freshman, I am very aware what we can do and what we can't do. We're very limited, especially just being a freshman. You're limited to how you can serve, and so I had to think about what does a successful legislative session look for me like? How do I feel good about serving the people who elected me to be in office? And so I really wanted to focus on bills that are affecting our children and our families and vulnerable communities. And so I ran 5 bills and I passed three. I passed a bill, a virtual reality bill that protects children in the digital space. Right now, I mean, before we pass this bill, there's a loophole. Predators were able to solicit minors, children, for cyber sex and different sexual acts online. And because it wasn't written very specific in code, we weren't able to prosecute these predators. I was able to write that bill, get a lot of support behind me, and it passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. And so really grateful that that bill passed. I passed the Veterans Protections Bill in this state and throughout our country. Veterans are being preyed on. And we have these companies or bad actors who come in and say, hey, I want to help you get your VA benefits. Uh, and they are charging them insane amounts of money. It's being tied to their mortgage and their par note. And it's basically a high interest rate loan. And so our veterans actually end up losing out on the benefits that they earned and that they deserve. The other bill I passed was a bike lane safety bill. This bill was interesting to me because it didn't pass unanimously, and I had to do a lot of one-on-one conversations because a lot of people just don't like cyclists or bike lanes, which I wasn't aware of. Um, and so I even had a colleague say to me, Ramona, I actually like parking at bike lanes, or even take that away from us. And and the thing is, making this bike lane safety bill and not allowing cars to park or stop is about road safety for all road users, cyclists, motorists, and pedestrians. And so this was a fun one that I got to work on with the Department of Transportation in Utah, and then really just work with my colleagues and explain that this is a good bill that makes the roads safe for all road users.
So you mentioned that sometimes there's like a difference of opinion, right? Especially as a freshman or as the blue candidate down at state. So tell us more about how you navigate that, and was there a difference from the beginning of the session to the end of the session as far as your ability to navigate that? Did you see growth?
Yes, I did. And so my top two priorities were one, to get one bill passed, and to develop relationships with my colleagues, in whatever way that was supposed to look like. Because I was able to connect with my colleagues and build those relationships, I passed 3 bills. And like the bills are great. Like if you ask me, I would say these are solid bills. It's good legislation. But because I was able to work with my colleagues and connect with each other, they were able to give my bills the attention I felt like they needed. And so it actually, a lot of people don't see this. Um, they just think all we do up there is fight. But I think it's 90% of the time that we actually go together. And in order for me to pass my bills, I had to get a lot of group support from my Republican colleagues. And there's a lot of things that you guys don't see where people are working together and trying to support each other. And so it's not all bad at there. There are moments and times where you really see people who are looking past differences and focusing on what we have in common.
Yeah, I was impressed with that when we spoke originally about how, there's really a great community, regardless of party affiliation or different persuasions and differences of thought. Um, do you feel like those differences are something that improves things in the long run as you're working together?
Yeah, I think being able to have the tough conversations and acknowledge the differences is a good thing. I mean, here's the thing. We're never going to agree 100%. I don't ever expect that, even with colleagues who are in my same party. But I do believe that we can open our hearts enough to have hard conversations and find some commonalities somewhere to make things better.
Yeah. I, Without the differences of thought, we don't have any innovation, regular creativity, right? You told me about a time that it was particularly hard, like a challenging thing. It was really near and dear to your heart, and then it wasn't turning out how you thought it would in the session. Can you tell us just a little bit more about how you dealt with that and what, systems or thought patterns you use to get through it?
Yeah, that was a bill that came up. I think we voted on it the second week of session. And like this is so new to me. I'm getting emails and phone calls, and people are showing up to the Capitol, and they are sharing very personal stories and just being so vulnerable, and asking me not to vote for this bill, and just like feeling what our community is feeling, what my constituents are feeling. I just thought there's no way I'm going to vote for that bill. And I knew that all my other colleagues were getting the exact same emails and vote calls and people showing up to their offices. And when it was time to vote on that bill, it passed. And in my mind, there were better ways to handle this piece of legislation. The bill passed. And so I was confused that I felt really stuck. Uh, it was hard for me to, it was one of those moments where sitting in my seat on the House floor, just wondering, like, what impact can I make? I have all these people who are disheartened and sad and very confused and feel like we are not representing them. And so for me, like, that hurt my heart deeply. Um, I cried. Like I went to my office, I cried. I went home that night and I cried. Uh, and I did that a few different times, especially early on in the session, because we just want to represent people. We want people to feel good about the work that we're doing and knowing that we want them to know that we care about them and we want access to all the things that they're deserving. We want quality education, access to healthcare. We want a good, strong, solid economy. And so when we feel like we're not delivering, for me, I felt like I'm not doing my job. Like, is there anything that I can do? And I mentioned that I cried and I went home and I cried, but that was my way of releasing all of that. I needed to do that so that the next morning I could get back up and go back to the Capitol. And even if things weren't going to go my way, uh, I know that I was there and I was at least one person like representing them and hearing them and listening to what their needs are. And so my lesson in that was um, there's also a piece where you're trying to understand your colleagues. Like, why would you go that way? Why would you not support helping teachers and firemen and policemen? Like, why do we vote against that? Uh, but I realized as I was going through the session and having meaningful conversations, having really hard conversations, that we actually all want the exact same thing. We're trying to help
and make things better. Uh, there is just different thoughts and different ideas of how to do that. And so for me, that was really helpful. Like that helped me grow my capacity emotionally and even mentally and spiritually is understanding, is just having a deeper, stronger understanding. People truly just want to make things better. And it may not look like that, but I think if we seek to understand, you'll see it. Do you find there's some universal values that are, talked about and celebrated and implemented as policy, as discussed throughout the legislative session?
Yeah, one of the things people talk about and maybe sometimes main clinic is the Utah way. That the Utah way does exist. And again it goes back to that thing where our values are like we have strong family values, right? We care about families, we care about children. Uh Utah's the number one in service every single year. It's right. We are. And so we have this heart of service where everything we do in this state is actually centered around giving and taking care of each other. And so I think uh, those are the values that we share. But the way it's like communication, I guess, like the way we give and receive it looks so differently. And I guess the way we translate our service and getting to others through policy also, it's very different. But it's up to us to have the right conversations and to look at our colleagues and say like, hey, I think you're wrong right there. And the hope is that they can look back at you and say, like, tell me more. Explain why you think that.
Uh, that's so those are, I'm guessing, somewhat uncomfortable conversations, or is it something that you grow into and it's just fine?
So it's always uncomfortable. I don't know when I will ever grow into it. I hope it happens someday.
Well, I think we all had those different, like, uncomfortable conversations that we have to have. What is the value in going ahead and having those as opposed to just not?
If we're not talking, if we're not communicating, then we're stuck. We're not moving forward. We're not moving in whatever it is that you think is important, wherever your values are. We're not talking to each other. Nothing's happening. It's not benefiting any of my university or our communities.
No, I've even at the community level, like neighbor to neighbor, how much value is there in that vulnerability and sharing some of the things that aren't going exactly the way you wish they would? What do you think about that?
I think that's so important. We talk a lot about lived experience and perspective. We don't all have the same perspectives or lived experiences. And so when I can talk to a friend or a neighbor or a colleague who can share something with me, I now have some new perspective that I can use when I'm voting on something or I'm deciding what bill to run or what conversations that I need to have. And so I think those conversations are actually so important in the sense of that's how we grow and that's how we move forward.
Yeah. As we've talked about these different things and some big wins, congratulations on the big wins. That's amazing. And yeah, we want to be able to have that safer community and those connections that you mentioned. That's the goal of all of us, right? To be able to achieve more as we're more comfortable and we grow to be who we need to be, really. If we all have contributions to make and finding out what those are come through life's experience, like you were saying. Is there a certain time in this last year that really underscored for you that your work mattered? And I don't know, along the journey, was there ever a time when you're like, well, you did mention, you said, why am I doing this? Sometimes that thought creeps in, and I know that happens in my life too. And I think it probably happens for all of us. Why are we doing what we're doing? And it's important to evaluate that. But in those moments, were there these compensatory moments that just underscored this work matters, this is why I'm doing it, and that's why I'm here? Have you had a moment like that in the last year?
Yeah, and this might seem insignificant, but it was a moment that made me realize that I'm exactly where I need to be. So we get a lot of elementary schools who come through the Capitol and do tours. And if they're in our district or if it's a community that you represent, sometimes you'll get asked, okay, do you want to come visit with the elementary schools? And so I get it often because I just enjoy seeing the students and just being around them. Um, but whenever there was a Polynesian girl or boy in the room, I always ask at the very end, do you guys have any questions for me? And whenever there was a little Polynesian boy or girl, uh, I always had at least one of them raise their hand and say, are you Polynesian? Are you Tongan or are you Samoan? Uh, and that meant so much to me. Growing up, I didn't have people who looked like me in these spaces. And just to be there and for little girls and boys to say, I identify with you. She looks like me. She looks like my mom. She talks like me. Uh, those moments were really special because I think it's important to have people who not just look like you, but who've experienced some of the things that you experience. Because in those moments, you're able to start connecting with the idea of when I grew up, I want to do that. When I grew up, I want to be in the legislature. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. But if you don't have those connections, you don't have those thoughts or those ideas.
Yeah. I love that. So those students feel seen. And in that moment, I would guess you also feel seen. Absolutely. So there's just that connection of bridge building, which you're doing throughout the whole session. Really, it sounds like the more I hear about the work that you've done, the more I see it's all about bridge building, making those personal connections to strengthen each other and help each other see new things and new ways. Um, you know, speaking to advocacy in particular, when you have a cause that's really particularly close to your heart, that like you need to go and speak with those different colleagues and things like that, what do you find is the best way to advocate for your cause?
I think be able to connect the value to the legislation. Like that's always been so important to me. But also for me, like the way I prepare to do things and speak with people, I have to be in a place where I can feel my heart is open and just like, yeah, that my energy is open to having a very vulnerable, open conversation. Uh, and before I ever would go to a committee hearing, and if I was going to present on a bill or if I was going to talk about my bill to a colleague, I would just say, always have a little prayer in my heart that even if I can't get out the right words, that they would feel the spirit of what I'm talking about, that they would feel my heart enough to say, like, oh, I felt something from that conversation. Like, I'm going to look into it. And so for me, I know that's, I don't know, maybe a little bit, but that is how I prepared myself, like going into any conversation, is hoping that if I didn't get the words right, they would at least feel my heart.
Yeah. So you needed to get to your heart first. So then you could really share it. And yeah, that's wonderful. I think if it's something that's dear to her heart, why not let her heart be involved in it? Right. Yeah. Let's let it do that. That's fantastic. Let's see. We're gonna let some people here ask some questions here in a few minutes. And the one last question I want to ask you is if someone listening is in their own season of being stretched or in a season of growth, which often feels miserable.
Yeah.
But um, what would you want them to know?
But you can get through it, but feel it. Like, allow yourself to truly experience all the hard things, because it's those hard moments and those uncomfortable feelings that mold you into the best version of yourself. I said earlier that there are so many moments where I'm like, "Ugh, that's why I went through that really crappy situation. That's why I was depressed in 2010." Like, there's so many hard things and things that we go through. Um, and I just know that there's a purpose for all of it. Uh, we're not just brought here to be miserable and uncomfortable and tired and over. I could go on. Um, we all get there. That happens to all of us. Yeah, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and go through it. Allow yourself to feel it. It it's preparing you and developing you for something really great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It it's hard to remember that sometimes in the moment. And but yeah, as life goes on and there's more of those things that really blossom or bloom, I think you get more confidence in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that you have and for really sharing your heart with us. Let's go ahead and have some questions.
I have one. I oh, I'm curious to know more about your journey. Like me here, was there something specific that happened in the community, out of the world, that you said, "I'm going. I have to be able to be somebody who can put forth bills and who can have more of a voice to represent my community," or was there a build up to that? Is this something that you've always wanted to do?
It wasn't something that I always wanted to do, and it wasn't even a thought for me, and I think it wasn't a thought because I didn't believe that. I don't know, that someone like me could be in this position to affect policy that actually helps people. My parents immigrated from Samoa back in the late 70s. Uh, they went to BYU Hawaii, came to the States. They worked multiple jobs. On the weekends, my parents would sell baked goods, or they would make baked goods in our garage and then drop me and my siblings off at Kearns Park and on a Saturday, and we would sell pineapple pies and different things like that. Uh, and so from a young age, I learned to work really hard. I learned the value of a dollar. But more importantly, I learned what it meant to be a part of something greater than myself. And I think as I grow into an adult and even in my youth, like, we always just did things in the community and served. And it was that perspective from serving. Uh, when you work closely with community, especially marginalized communities, uh, you have a front row seats to the gaps and the disparities within a lot of these communities, and the lack of access to very important things. And so I think because I have that perspective, uh, when the seat became open and Senator Kwan asked me to run for it, I immediately said yes, because I knew that I could bring a perspective that is lacking in the legislature. And I just wanted to have some impact and have some voice for those people and those communities, people like me and my family who are new Americans. Uh, and so, yeah, because you know that, because you have that perspective, for me, I felt like I can go and I can represent these people.
Awesome. I have precious book. I've been actually writing a list of questions as you can talking and either to guys at DP call you to ask questions. Now my first one is, do your parents still sell baked goods? Yes. We actually opened up a bakery, my siblings and I. We did this our whole entire lives, like until I was in my 20s, and where we worked out of our home and we catered and we sold goods at the park. Um, and we all agreed that we would never, ever have anything to do with food. We grew up, had our careers, and I think it was 2015 where all of us, almost at the exact same time, my siblings and I, um, felt like we were supposed to do something. We were supposed to open up a bakery.
didn't even know it's called Singalta Bakery and Cafe, and we sell many of the foods that my parents made in our garage and that we sold at the park. And so it's really much part of our legacy and our way of connecting with community still. Lots of nonprofits come over, and that's kind of the hangout spot for organizers. Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. One of my more serious questions. Um, what one do I want to take? I guess in facilitating difficult conversations or entering a conversation where you're either trying to persuade or trying to understand someone, how do you create a space of like openness and honesty while delivering difficult information? And what are some like interpersonal skills or tactics that you use for persuasion in like a very humane, open way? I think before you ever get to the conversation, it's the work that you do before. It's meaningful connections and truly wanting to understand people and get to know them and know about their families. And then when you go, and because we know that difficult things are going to come up and those conversations are going to happen. And so when they do, uh, you've already connected and found things that you share and shared values. And so when it's time to have those conversations, I think it's always about having an open heart. And sometimes, um, they're not going to agree with you and you're not going to agree with them. But even having that conversation means something. My first week in the legislature, there was a representative who I really respect, who runs some very like tough bills. But I didn't agree with one of her bills. And I'm a freshman and she's a senior leader in the majority party. And so we and another freshman colleague both didn't agree with us still. And we were a little bit nervous. And then we decided, you know what? We are just going to go talk to her before committee hearing and let her know. And she smiled and said, "Thank you guys for coming and having this conversation with me. I never expected you to vote for the bill, but I appreciate that you guys came and had the conversation and let me know ahead of time you weren't going to support the bill." And throughout the session, we kept that relationship, and it was one of the most meaningful relationships I've had. And she was someone who actually supported some of my bills. And so I think it has so much to do about just like really seeking out genuine relationships. Okay. I have more sort of dependent. So I just want to what outlaws the met.
Okay. One of my other questions is about being a mom. And this is something I think about. I love just seeing women doing amazing things in the community and the world because I had a working mom my whole life, but I just like envision that for myself. But I am someone who also wants to have like a lot of kids. I feel like the world sometimes puts a negative blanket on motherhood and that it's just draining and tiring and exhausting. But how has being a mother helped you in your career and in this position? Being a mom grows your capacity to love in ways that like you'll never ever experience. I just remember when my son was first born and feeling so grateful. And my prayer back then was like, "Heavenly Father, I can't believe you did. Like, you trusted me to raise this boy and to love him." And so like to have like so much love and care for another human being, um, it is so important when you're working in legislation and talking about really sensitive things that impact our communities and our state, right? And so it's that capacity to love someone and to care for someone, even when they do things wrong, even when like things aren't going the way they should be, but still like knowing like you have this like large capacity to care for others. I think that is something that we're lacking. Is the capacity to love people and see people even through very difficult things and when we don't agree with each other. How do you go about like expanding that capacity
to love and to accept other people and to have an open mind to goals who maybe it doesn't come naturally, or they don't have children, or they're not a woman. I feel like sometimes the way like are just naturally more open, but that is like a gender stereotype. That is a posture. Anyway, so how do you like invite that in other people? I think to serve. I had a conversation last night with one of my nonprofits. Another nonprofit once toured together, and was a little bit of a back and forth. And uh, my response is, when you seek ways to serve people and to love people, uh, it comes back to you. And so when you're thinking about how do you make someone else have that same capacity and give them back, when you give it, it's going to come back to you in some form. Thank you, Nemi. Ella, you're up. But
Hi. So I have a few questions. So being a woman, first of all, and Polynesian as well, culturally, just your essence, I'm feeling like you. It's different way the operating world. And so how you bring that to
the state legislature, how do you, because listening to you talk, I can tell that you operate a lot in these ways, very intuitively, with intention and heart and time out of an open heart. These are not things that are necessarily praised, I would say, or advocated in a powerful arena or in those spaces. Or what is your experience? Have you found that it is accepted? Are those things that you talk about openly in your leadership, using your intuition as a woman? Not easy, to talk about these openly in those spaces. Leadership roles that you're mostly working with men, one men in foreign policy events. It can be difficult, and I think it has a lot to do with using your intuition to read the room too. But one thing that I recognize and I'm coming to understand better is that you can be really smart and be very knowledgeable and do your homework on all the topics, right? And you can also do that with love. Like you can do all those things at the exact same time. So maybe I'm not using the word love or having an open heart, but I'm giving it to them with love. And I think that is something that we can't be as every day. And just knowing that you could do all those things, you could have all those hard conversations, and but the intention behind it is to love.
And then the other question I have is the specific and you grew as a mom, how do you set boundaries? Because as a look story, you want to start, you want to help every nonprofit, you want to be there, so how do you discern and keep yourself bounded so that you not be able to certain the unstiffness?
That's something that's, that's the anti-side. That all did maybe also me. I could just speak the name. That's something that I am still working on, because I get asked to be at a lot of Taysais, a lot of community events, and it's really hard for me to say no, because when I was running for office and as I was serving in other ways in community, these are the people who showed up for me. They showed up at my door on Saturday mornings and on the weeknights to knock doors. They gave me donations. They supported me. And so I want to go wherever they ask me to go. Like, I want to be at those events. But there are times that I have to say no. It just so that because I need rest and my family needs me. But I have a really great husband who does not like community. Not that he doesn't like community. He doesn't like just being in spaces where there's a lot of people. Right? But because he knows the work that I'm doing, I've noticed, and he didn't say to us this, but every Saturday we hang out all day long. So I can have 5 hangs on my calendar for Saturday. And just lately, I just know that he's going to be with me. And so I think it's something that we have to schedule and be intentional about, because we also don't want to burn out and not be able to give in a meaningful way. And there's moments in my life where I've just overdone it and gone and just worked and worked. And I haven't been able to serve and be very helpful. And so yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. And I have not completely figured it out.
Please let us know when you do. I'll try to figure it out. I think there might be the uncommonness. So Liz. Well, thank you for showing up for us today and for really sharing all that you did, kind of behind the curtain view, right? Like you were asking about. You were very open with us about the conditions of your heart and leading with love and those intimate things, prayer and all of that. And I really appreciate that. I think anytime we're willing to share those vulnerable spots with each other, then we know how to better handle our own lives, right? And because in the session or whatnot, it needs to be a little different than that. So yeah, thank you for leading with that today and letting us all join a little bit of your journey. And thank you guys all for your questions. Wonderful questions, great views. I'm really dying to try the guava cakes at your bakery. I've got to tip it over there and give it a try. You have to. It's so popular. That one. And what else would you have me try? One there. Halfia cake is really popular, Coco Sama cakes, but we're known for our meat pies. We sell New Zealand and Australian meat pies, and there's savory pies. Really good. You'll have to come check it out. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And is there any one last thing you would have us know about your work that you're doing? Anything that we can help you with in your work?
Right now, I'm working on a lot of different things, but I guess the last thing that I would share is, don't sell yourself short. Our mind and body and spirit is amazing, and our capacity to grow in these areas is limitless. I've learned that through experience and through time and word. And so regardless of how hard or difficult a moment is for you, it's just a moment that will get you to wherever it is you're supposed to be. Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys all...
Thank you again. And also, I wanted to let all of you know Utah Advocacy Coalition is also hosting something called People Pitch. And we will be hosting nonprofits and those who support nonprofits in a dynamic space together and bringing our talents in ways that will help each other. And so this episode will actually be posted to YouTube very shortly. So we'll be able to look at this again and share it with those who weren't able to make it today. There were many people who reached out who wish they could have been here, and we're excited to spend this time with you. So thanks.